Most people look at avoidance and see strength. They see composure, control, the person who never breaks, the one who always seems fine, even when everyone else is falling apart. They mistake silence for peace, distance for confidence, and detachment for emotional power. But here's the quiet truth few ever notice. That armor they wear so effortlessly, it's not built from strength, it's built from fear. Every pause in their reply, every moment of withdrawal, every "I'm fine, that sounds too calm," those are not signs of peace. They are walls, carefully constructed to keep the world at a safe distance. Avoidants don't crave loneliness, they've just made peace with it, because closeness has always felt like danger. And yet for all that armor, for all that steel around their heart, silence has a way of finding the cracks. Especially when that silence comes from you, because they expect to be the one who disappears, the one who controls the distance. But when you mirror their quiet, when you stop reaching out, stop chasing, stop filling the silence they created, the illusion of control starts to tremble. That's when the armor that once felt invincible begins to feel heavy, too heavy to carry. And deep beneath that calm exterior, something begins to stir, a flicker of emotion they've spent years trying to silence. And for the first time, they feel what they never wanted to feel: vulnerability, without escape. Avoidants don't wake up one day and decide to become distant. They build that distance slowly, almost unconsciously, piece by piece, layer by layer, until the walls around their emotions feel safer than the people waiting outside them. For them, distance isn't rejection, it's protection. It's the only way they've learned to feel safe. Every delayed reply, every quiet withdrawal, every sudden "I just need space" isn't an attack, it's a reflex, a shield that activates the moment things start to feel too close. Because closeness for them doesn't always mean comfort, it often means risk. Risk of being seen, misunderstood, or worse, rejected. You see, avoidants were not born detached. At some point, closeness became painful. They learned that when they opened up, something bad followed: conflict, disapproval, abandonment. So they taught themselves a survival skill: control the distance before the distance controls you. They learned to disappear before anyone could leave, to stay silent before anyone could ask too much, to look calm on the surface while their heart quietly retreats beneath layers of emotional armor. This pattern becomes their safety zone, their invisible home. It's predictable, controlled. They know how it feels to be lonely, but not how to feel truly seen. And so, when affection or intimacy approaches, they flinch, not because they don't care, but because caring too much has always been dangerous. To them, emotional closeness is like standing near a fire, warm, beautiful, but terrifying. So they keep just enough distance to feel its light, without risking the burn. But every shield comes at a cost, because the same wall that keeps them safe also keeps them untouched, unloved, unreached. And while they may never admit it, behind that distance, they often whisper a quiet truth to themselves: "I wish I didn't have to push people away to feel safe." Avoidants know silence. They've mastered it. For them, silence has always been a weapon, a way to regain control, to reset the balance when emotions start to feel too heavy. But they've never learned how to handle silence when it's not theirs. When you go quiet, something inside them shifts. At first they pretend it doesn't matter. They tell themselves you're just giving them space, like they always wanted. They even convince themselves it's a relief. No pressure, no confrontation, perfect. But deep down, something starts to hum, a faint unfamiliar tension that they can't quite name. Because this time, the silence doesn't feel safe. It feels uncertain, out of their hands. See, when they create silence, they feel powerful. They control when it starts and when it ends. But when you create it, they lose that control. Now they're the ones wondering, are you done trying? Are you slipping away? Did I finally push too far? They try to stay calm, to look unaffected, but the calm starts cracking from within. The messages they used to ignore now sit unread for too long. The absence of your words begins to echo louder than your presence ever did. It's not anger they feel, it's something more uncomfortable, uncertainty. And for an avoidant, uncertainty is the one thing they can't control. So they scroll back through your old texts, they replay old moments in their head, trying to find the last time you reached out, the last sign of warmth. Because in your silence, their emotional compass starts spinning. They don't know what to expect anymore. And that's when it hits them. The distance they built to protect themselves has finally turned against them. Your silence has become their mirror. And for the first time, they see themselves through your absence, small, uncertain, and suddenly, human. At first they think they're fine. They tell themselves they've been here before, they've survived distance, silence, detachment. It's familiar territory, but this silence feels different. It doesn't soothe, it stings. They open their phone, scroll to your name, hover there for a moment, then lock the screen again. 2 minutes later, they unlock it, do the same thing, again. Their mind says, don't reach out, you'll look weak, but their heart whispers, what if they never come back? And that whisper begins to echo. They check your profile, not to like anything, not to comment, just to see, to make sure you're still there, still breathing in their world somehow. But even that starts to feel dangerous, because each post, each story, reminds them how quiet it's become between you. They type a message, something simple, casual, safe, then delete it, then type it again, then delete it again. They don't want to look desperate, but they're not ready to feel forgotten either. It's a war, not between you and them, but between their fear of closeness and their fear of losing you. For someone who hides behind composure, this quiet panic is unbearable. They start losing control in the one place they always felt in command, their emotions. Because the truth is, your silence didn't just stop communication, it disrupted their illusion of control. Now every unread message, every empty notification bar, becomes a mirror, reflecting what they tried to deny, that they do feel, that they do care, and that this distance they built was never meant to be this real. So they sit there, calm on the outside, chaos underneath, fighting a storm they can't show, trying to hold the cracks together, even as your silence quietly pulls them apart. Inside the avoidant, two voices begin to fight. One is cold, logical, disciplined, the voice of pride. The other trembles, fragile, uncertain, the voice of fear. Pride says, don't break first. They'll come back if they really care. It reminds them of every time vulnerability led to disappointment. It tells them silence is strength, distance is control. But fear whispers something else. What if they've already moved on? What if this time, your silence wasn't power, it was the end? And suddenly, control doesn't feel empowering anymore. It feels heavy. It feels lonely. They start replaying old conversations. The last time you laughed together, the moment you started sounding different, the final words before the quiet began. They analyze every message you didn't send, every pause, every scene that stayed unanswered. Their mind turns into a detective, searching for proof that you still care. But the truth they can't escape is this: the only thing they're finding is themselves. The fear beneath their armor, the longing they've spent years denying. They open your chat window again. The typing cursor blinks like a heartbeat. They want to reach out, to just say something, but doing that means surrendering. It means admitting that they care more than they ever said, and pride won't allow that. So they sit there, phone in hand, emotions rising like waves, and do nothing. But that nothing is not peace. It's a battlefield, because every second of silence now feels like a choice between keeping their pride or keeping you. And deep down, they know they can't have both. The very armor that once protected them is now what's keeping them from the one thing they truly want: connection. At first, they thought your silence was just another phase, a space they could wait out, like all the others before it. But as the days turn into quiet echoes, something inside them begins to shift. The silence no longer feels like safety. It feels like reflection, because what once felt like control now feels like consequence. And in that stillness, for the very first time they see themselves, not through their mind's excuses, but through the emptiness they created. Your silence becomes a mirror, a clear, unflinching mirror that reflects everything they've been running from. They see the unanswered messages they used to ignore. They feel the hesitation they used to cause. They taste the same loneliness they once dismissed in others. It's no longer abstract. It's real. It's sitting with them in the room, whispering, "This is what your distance feels like." And for someone who built their entire identity on not needing anyone, that realization hits deeper than words ever could. They begin to understand that distance doesn't always protect. Sometimes it isolates. Sometimes it wounds the very heart it was meant to guard. They remember how it felt easier to pull away than to explain, how saying "I need space" was simpler than saying "I'm scared." But now, there's no one left to misunderstand them, no one left to chase, only silence, and themselves. And that's when something quietly profound happens. They stop seeing you as the one who hurt them, and start realizing how often they've hurt others the same way. It's not guilt, it's awakening, the moment where self-protection turns into self-awareness. They start to grasp a truth they never wanted to face. The walls they built to keep pain out have also kept love from ever fully getting in. Your silence didn't punish them, it revealed them, and that revelation, gentle but piercing, becomes the first crack of genuine transformation. Your silence is no longer about waiting. It's about choosing peace over pursuit. You don't chase. You don't explain. You don't beg to be understood. You simply withdraw your energy, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. And that silence, calm and unwavering, does what 1,000 words never could. It unsettles them, not because it's cruel, but because it's clear. They can feel it, the shift in power. For the first time, you're no longer orbiting around their emotional gravity. You've stepped out of their pattern and into your own center. Your silence says, "I no longer beg to be seen." It says, "I know my worth, even when you don't." And that energy hits them deeper than any confrontation ever could. Because avoidants don't fear anger, they fear peace. They know how to handle drama, distance and demand. But they don't know what to do when the storm they expected never comes. When instead of noise, there's composure. When instead of pleading, there's presence. That's when they start to feel both respect and fear. Respect, because your silence carries grace. It's not cold, it's composed. It doesn't try to win. It simply walks away from the battlefield. It speaks a language they never mastered, emotional maturity. And fear, because in that stillness, they sense something shifting. They realize they've lost the one form of control they always counted on: your reaction. Now they're the ones waiting, checking your profile, wondering what you're thinking, if you've moved on, if you ever cared at all. Your silence becomes their mirror, but also your declaration, a gentle unspoken boundary that says, "I'm done shrinking myself to be understood." You didn't win by overpowering them. You won by mastering yourself. And that's what commands both respect and fear. The quiet strength of someone who no longer needs validation to know their value. Silence was never meant to punish. It was meant to teach. It's not about ignoring someone or proving a point. It's about reclaiming your peace. The kind of peace that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't explain. The kind that simply says, "I've learned to protect my energy." When your silence breaks an avoidance armor, it's not victory, it's revelation. You didn't destroy them, you simply reflected them back to themselves. Because silence is truth in its purest form. It doesn't argue, it doesn't justify, it just is. And in that stillness, everything false begins to fall away. The games, the ego, the emotional distance, they all lose their power in front of someone who no longer needs to fight for understanding. True strength isn't loud. It doesn't need validation to feel seen. It sits quietly, grounded and whole, knowing that peace is the loudest answer of all. So if your silence made them finally feel, if it cracked the armor they hid behind, remember, you didn't win a battle, you rose above one. Because wisdom doesn't shout to be heard. It whispers through calm hearts and steady minds that refuse to shrink. Sometimes, truth doesn't need to be spoken, it just needs to be lived, and that's the kind of silence that changes everything.